Good evening and welcome to our special coverage on the ongoing efforts to establish a ceasefire in Gaza. Mediators from across the region and beyond are convening in Cairo to bring an end to the devastating conflict. Before we begin, let's take a look at the latest updates from the ground. According to reports, talks are intensifying in Cairo as mediators work towards establishing a lasting ceasefire. The humanitarian situation remains dire, with international organizations calling for immediate relief for Gaza's population. Israel's Security Cabinet has ratified the ceasefire deal to exchange dozens of detainees and pause the 15-month war for an initial 6 weeks. The approval came after an unexpected delay, which sparked fears that last-minute disagreements between Israel and Hamas could scuttle the agreement. The far-right members of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition government also threatened to derail months of work to end the conflict. The deal will now go to the full cabinet for the final sign-off so that the agreement can be implemented on Sunday with the release of the first detainees and prisoners. Israelis supporting hard-right politicians have blocked a highway in Jerusalem, denouncing the ceasefire agreement. Around 200 protesters attended a rally near the Israeli parliament and government ministries. The hardliners in Netanyahu's government were still hoping to block the deal, though a majority of ministers were expected to support it. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich's party stated that it would demand a return to fighting at the end of the truce's first phase as a condition for staying in government. Meanwhile, Israel's hardline National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has stated that he will resign from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government if it ratifies the ceasefire deal in Gaza, which he strongly opposes. The Israeli media outlets reported earlier that the cabinet was expected to vote to ratify the agreement today, but there has been no confirmation from the Prime Minister's office. This week, Ben-Gvir urged Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich to join him in a last-minute ditch attempt to prevent the ceasefire deal, which he described as dangerous capitulation to Hamas. Smotrich has called the deal to halt the fighting in Gaza and exchange the Israeli detainees for Palestinian prisoners a catastrophe for Israel, but has not threatened to quit the government. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has expressed confidence that the Gaza ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas will begin as expected on Sunday, January the 19th, despite a last-minute glitch. Blinken, in his final news conference as the U.S. top diplomat, said that he had been speaking with U.S. negotiator Brett McGurk and Qatari officials to resolve the issue. The International Criminal Court prosecutor Karim Khan has defended his decision to bring war crimes allegations against Israel's prime minister, saying that Israel had made no real effort to investigate the allegations itself. The ICC judges issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, former Israeli Defense Chief Yoav Gallant, and Hamas leader Ibrahim al-Masri last November on charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity during the Gaza conflict. Israel has rejected the jurisdiction of the Hague-based court and denies the allegations of war crimes. The United States, Israel's main ally, is also not a member of the ICC and has criticized the arrest warrants against Netanyahu and Gallant. The World Health Organization has called for the international community to step up and fund a scaled-up aid response in Gaza after Israel and Hamas reached a ceasefire deal. The UN Health Agency said that its member states, donors, and the global community, including the private sector, should support both the urgent health needs and the longer-term rebuilding of Gaza's healthcare system. Peppercorn said that WHO was ready to deliver, although the significant security and political obstacles to delivering aid across Gaza need to be removed. Speaking at the same briefing, the WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom said that the WHO is seeking $1.5 billion to help more than 300 million people living in 42 emergency zones. A high-level Egyptian source has confirmed that technical meetings are ongoing in Cairo, focusing on the mechanisms for implementing the ceasefire agreement in Gaza. According to the source, the discussions are centered on the logistics of delivering aid into Gaza, with plans to send 600 trucks per day, as outlined in the truce agreement. The technical meetings, which began today, Friday, in Egypt's capital, Cairo, involve teams from Egypt, Qatar, the United States, and Israel. The goal is to finalize the procedures for the successful implementation of the ceasefire, which has become a critical priority following the recent escalation in Gaza. And to help us understand these developments, we're joined by Mr. Ahmed Hussein, Editor-in-Chief of Egypt's Shrouk newspaper. Mr. Ahmed, thank you very much for being here with us. And let me start by asking you, the mediators in Cairo are under immense pressure to deliver results. What are the primary challenges that they face in achieving a ceasefire agreement?
Upon you, the prominent challenge is that there is no guarantee or finding a guarantee that Israel really commits to the truth on the ground. All the previous agreements have witnessed violations by the Israeli forces, and consequently with the challenges faced by Netanyahu, Israel Prime Minister, with his partners in the right-wing such as Smotrich and Ben Gvir. He will try to prove to them that he will try to get out of the agreement because they all agree on their will to go back to fighting in Gaza. So he's now trying to get out of the agreement. The second challenge is entering the humanitarian aid convoys to Gaza with the destroyed road networks and the destroyed infrastructure. How are we going to be able to enter this desperately needed humanitarian aid, especially to the north? The third challenge is who is going to rule Gaza in the next day to the ceasefire. So far, we have not reached a consensus by the mediators or the conflict parties about a committee to be formed to rule Gaza. The President Mahmoud Abbas has not issued a resolution to form this committee. So this is a very difficult challenge that faces the mediators, especially the United States, that is writing a condition that they do not want Hamas ruling Gaza anymore. Who is going to rule Gaza? Who's going to supervise the humanitarian aid convoys? So many questions that need to be answered so that the ceasefire agreement can actually hold facing this hard reality.
Sir, international actors, including the United Nations, have called for immediate relief efforts in Gaza. Can you outline the steps required to ensure these calls are effectively translated into action And what role do international and regional players need to play to facilitate the humanitarian aid delivery?
As we know, if there is a 600 aid trucks entered every day to Gaza, especially the north, that has been completely destroyed, and aid has been hindered more than once to enter the north, which is one of the challenges. How can we ensure regular aid access to the north? At the beginning of the agreement, that will be a huge challenge to the convoys to reach the north. What will guarantee the continuity of these aid convoys? Here we're talking about the international community. How are they going to advocate for Gaza? How are they going to ensure the continuity of the humanitarian aid access, and how they're going to stop Israel from committing any more violations, and how the international or the US stop giving Israel more weapons and supplies.
So Egypt has positioned itself as a key mediator in this crisis. What are the strategic advantages Egypt brings to the table in this negotiation process? Additionally, how does Egypt's involvement shape the dynamics of regional cooperation or tension in addressing this conflict?
As we know, Egypt is the main Arab state that went to war 4 times to defend the Palestinian cause and signed into an agreement in 1979 to advocate for the Palestinian cause. We're all aware Egypt is not a natural or regular mediator. It's a major Arab state, always advocating to the Palestinian people, and has condemned the Israeli aggression since the first day, and stood to defend the Gazans and threatened the Israeli schemes to take over Gaza, and worked tirelessly to ensure the humanitarian aid access to Gaza, and stopped the scheme of the Gaza evacuation. The Egyptian effort now is highly important and efficient, as in the next period Egypt will be one of the supervisors to achieve and implement this agreement. The negotiations took place in Cairo during the past few days and will continue during the next few hours to ensure the implementation of this agreement. Egypt always defends the Gazans' interests.
Yes, Mr. Ahmed, many observers are concerned that any agreement reached might only serve as a temporary solution. So in your own point of view, what must be included in the ceasefire agreement to ensure that it serves as a foundation for long-term peace and stability? Could you provide examples from past conflicts where similar agreements succeeded or failed?
As we're all aware, Israelis has waged the most difficult aggression on Gaza since 1948. Some would say that the shelling of Gaza is more and even more difficult than Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the World War II. So we have seen firsthand that there are 46,000 deaths, and 2 million has been displaced, complete destruction of infrastructure. Israel does not want a clear item in the agreement for a lasting ceasefire. for so many reasons, most prominent of which the will of Netanyahu to continue as the Prime Minister of Israel and to guarantee the support of the right-wing faction. He does not want to submit to the international community and achieve a ceasefire. He wants to guarantee the right-wing factions, figures such as Smotrich and Ben Gvir to continue in his support. They do not want to face the prosecution for their action later, so they will attempt to do everything in their power to hinder this agreement and to apply the Lebanese model to keep violating the agreement every day.
The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is worsening by the day. So what immediate measures should be prioritized to address the needs of the civilian population? How can the international organizations and governments collaborate effectively to mitigate this crisis?
The first point in this matter is the lasting access of humanitarian aid and opening the Rafah crossing to pass the humanitarian aid to revive the Palestinian population, establish caravans or buildings to protect the population from the cold waves, as their buildings, their homes has been completely destroyed, rehabilitating the infrastructure in Gaza, especially the water and electricity lines, and providing access to fuel and providing life essentials. These are the major challenges that could face the humanitarian aid providers.
Mr. Ahmed, we have seen various external actors, including the United States, European nations, expressing their support for the ceasefire negotiations. So what influence do these external actors have on the mediation process, and how can their involvement actually impact the outcomes of the talks?
This international community stood helpless since day one to apply any real change. There is a lot of welcome and support to this agreement, but I think the main factor that is creating a real difference is the intervention of President Trump and the essence of this agreement was offered to Netanyahu since last May, and he evaded this solution. He wanted and targeted turning the Gaza Strip into an uninhabitable area. But the pressure applied by the US on Netanyahu is the only thing making difference at the moment. And consequently, I think that not only Netanyahu is the one who should be addressed, but also the elected President Trump should be also a major part of the negotiation to ensure the peace in the Middle East.
Looking at the broader geopolitical context, how do the outcomes of these negotiations impact the region's stability? What are the potential ramifications for neighboring countries if a sustainable ceasefire is not achieved?
Now we're seeing a ceasefire agreement and not a peace agreement. And even the ceasefire will not be lasting or permanent. It's only to address the pressures applied by the US president. They only wanted to release the biggest number of prisoners or detainees and only to stop the fighting or the combat in Gaza and to address only the West Bank at the moment so that Israel can achieve their goals. to actually occupy the West Bank. So Palestinians should not leave the opportunity to Israel to actually take over the West Bank, and there should be Arab pressure applied on Israel to prevent the takeover of the West Bank.
Mr. Ahmed, history has shown us that peace agreements often face significant challenges in the implementation process. What mechanisms can be put in place to ensure the commitments made during these talks are honored by all the parties involved?
Guarantees are political guarantees. They're political to be applied, but the Palestinians do not have the strength to apply the pressure to achieve or ensure the commitment of these pledges. The Arab countries shall apply pressure on the US and to have a... Sorry.
Sir, moving on, the public opinion and media coverage play a significant role in shaping the perceptions of conflicts and their resolutions. How do you assess the role of media in influencing the progress of these negotiations?
Integral role outing the Israeli practices and crimes in Gaza, but there were also international media platforms that were biased to the Israeli narrative. The Arab media are now working tirelessly to out the Israeli efforts to commit a complete genocide in the Gaza Strip, to wipe out the entire population. A lot of groups were advocating for the Gaza population in the US who were stopped and oppressed.
Finally, sir, as we look ahead, what are the key milestones and indicators that we should monitor to assess the success of these negotiations, and what will signal that progress is being made towards a lasting resolution?
No, there is no hope for a lasting resolution. The lasting resolution will be an independent Palestinian state, and there is no enough pressure to be applied on Israel. The right-wing Israeli government refuses any lasting resolution, and the Trump administration does not believe on an independent Palestinian state, and they are not advocating for anything in this regard to be translated on reality. Yes, the United Nations acknowledged a Palestinian state, but it's only a matter of papers. But for an actual Palestinian state, there must be real efforts from the international community.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ahmed Hussein, for your invaluable insights. And as the situation in Gaza continues to unfold, we will bring you the latest updates and expert analysis. For now, we remain hopeful that the talks in Cairo will pave the way for a lasting ceasefire. That brings us to the end of our special coverage for today. Thank you very much for watching, and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.